Hey everyone, and welcome to Backseat Sports. I'm Josh, and that is Caleb, and we are back at it again, baby. Husker game week is upon us once again. Nebraska versus Colorado is on Saturday. The blood's boiling, and we are ready to make some predictions and talk about the game and go over it all.
Oh man, the hate is real this week. If you don't remember last year, some player twisted Adrian Martinez's ankle and had him out. They're gross.
I mean, yeah, there's a lot on the line this week for both teams. Both teams are heading in 1-0. I mean, it's going to be a wild time. We're going to be going through it all in this video, basically. I mean, my goodness. We talked about so much in our last video, in our reaction video to the South Alabama game. So we're going to be referencing a lot of things we talked about in that video. So if you guys haven't watched that one, I highly recommend you guys go check that one out because there's so much we went through that in that video with a lot of good information. I think a lot of good talking points and things that Nebraska has to look out for heading into this week and into the future of this college football season. And so we recommend you go check that one out.
If you can stomach watching Josh and I talk for, a few more minutes,
Yeah, of course, of course. So basically the first note going into this week is Maurice Washington's court date was pushed back again to October 17th. We don't really know what's going on with that, but it's pushed back. And the coaching staff basically said until we have a ruling on Maurice Washington officially, he's going to keep playing. So he'll be in the lineup for the next few weeks at least, which is good news for Nebraska football and for the offense in general, especially like by far the best running back in that core. Yeah. And we're excited to have him officially on the field upcoming handful of weeks.
Colorado was coming in this year way less hype than Nebraska, and Nebraska with a ton of hype. And the game's kind of flip-flopped. Colorado scored a bunch of points on Colorado State. People are really on that hype train now, and Nebraska had a so-so performance against South Alabama again. Talking about Josh, if you want to hear all our thoughts about that our last video is a really good place for that. One seems on the upward swing and one's on like a downward slope. After those 1 week knee-jerk reactions, I think this is going to be a really fun game this year. Our offense really sputtered this first week. Our offensive line looked really, really bad. Worse than it had in years past. Cam Jurgens, this is his first time. He hadn't had limited practice, but he earned the starting spot. Had lots of bad snaps, and kind of the whole offensive line did not look cohesive whatsoever.
No.
It was all a mess. They were not getting a push, and they were out-muscled and out-toughed by South Alabama, which was surprising after all the stuff about strength and how much bigger we had gotten. It was kind of shocking for Nebraska fans to see, and Adrian Martinez played his worst game of his career, maybe besides when he was kind of hurt in the Michigan game.
Yeah,
those
probably.
Two. He was frazzled, didn't know what was going on. He missed some throws. He had happy feet and left the pocket early, and really wasn't a decisive runner even when he did escape the pocket. And we didn't see him break off those big runs that we had been so accustomed to seeing that last year.
Long term, obviously the only worry that we talked about a lot in our last video was the offensive line. And it's going to be interesting to see how that performs in this week against Colorado. My goodness, last year, Nebraska versus Colorado was a whirlwind of a game. I mean, Nebraska, it felt like at every turn we should have won that game. We turned the ball over. We lost the turnover battle like we generally do in those types of games, and it really, truly did cost us. And I mean, we outplayed Colorado at almost every other instance of the game, and still ended up losing because of those turnovers. Laviska Shenault had himself a great game last year, 177 yards and a touchdown, 10 receptions as well. And obviously every team's going to talk about Laviska Shenault when talking about Colorado, and that's going to be a big key this season. Steven Montez last year as well played a great game against us, and he looked really good against Colorado State. I mean, how Colorado plays those types of situations is just really interesting. Again, last year the turnovers was what plagued us, and we cannot be turning the ball over against Colorado this year. I mean, Colorado State had 3 turnovers heading into the last drive of the game, and they were still only down by 14, and they ended up fumbling the ball, and it was returned for a touchdown on their final drive, which is why the score is what it is. Colorado State, they lost the game because of turnovers. Nebraska cannot be in the same boat.
Unfortunate turnovers, which Nebraska has been very accustomed to, but this year, that's the one bright spot about that first game was how much our defense had improved and how much Nebraska's defense started to reflect what Scott Frost really wanted that defense to be, creating turnovers. And that's what our team did. Obviously, 5 takeaways had not happened for a long time. And so that's going to be really exciting this year. And I think our secondary is our strongest point of our defense. We had heard a lot about the defensive line. Linebackers were always kind of sketchy, but our defensive backs looked great, and there was actually some depth at that too. If Williams can come back And, Cam Taylor and Lamar Jackson and Dicaprio Bootle, that's a pretty solid core. I really feel like we're going to be able to do a lot better, and I don't think Laviska Shenault's going to be able to get as many yards as he has been. Laviska Shenault in these last 3 games has been held to 65 or less yards per game. I'm sure that Nebraska coaches have looked and seen how they've been covering him. Laviska Shenault said he hated the way Colorado State covered him this last game. And so I think we're going to be able to do some things. And we have the core finally to be able to stop them. Looking at Colorado's secondary, it's bad. It was not good at all. They were short. They missed tackles. They were small. I think that Pac-12 defense, especially on that secondary side, isn't great to say the least. I think that Nebraska's going to have a lot of really good opportunities to score the ball. I'm not saying South Alabama had a better defense by any means.
When it comes to keys to the game or how Nebraska's going to actually win this game, it truly is all about exposing that defense for Nebraska, and the offense has to play well. Again, we talked about the offensive line needs to play as a unit. That was the biggest problem last game. It really wasn't cohesive at all. They played really bad, and last game, Colorado State exposed Colorado on the edges. That was where the secondary looked most susceptible, was outside the hash marks, and that's something that Nebraska can definitely utilize to our advantage.
We got speed.
We've got the speed. We have the small guys on the edges. We've got J.D. Spielman. We got Wan'Dale Robinson. We have Maurice Washington. Those guys are going to be able to get to the edges and hopefully expose Colorado in those areas. And that's going to be, I think, the most important key to Nebraska's offensive success is going to be able to get to the edges like that on Colorado, get the ball in the flats, and utilize that space effectively, just like Colorado State did.
J.D. Spielman can't just touch the ball 3 times like he did against South Alabama.
Yeah.
He needs at least 10 touches. And that's not counting the punt returns. He needs 10 touches on our offensive side. Wan'Dale Robinson's going to need more touches. And we're just going to have to find creative ways to get it into their hand, whether that's jet sweeps, whether it's those little bubble screens or wide receiver screens. We just need to get it in their hands early. Well, I think what else is going to be really effective besides our wide receivers is going to be getting the ball into Maurice Washington's hands. Just him being a consistent run presence as well as being able to catch those balls in the flat is going to be super huge for us. And it's just going to create a lot of problems. Having a split back set with Dedrick Mills back there creates a lot of problems. And I think we're going to be able to throw a lot more at Colorado just on those outside edges, because we really did not do that at all with South Alabama. We just tried to run on the inside mostly, except for when we tried to run it on the inside, but was not effective at all. The only times we did was when Maurice Washington came in for the second half and Wan'Dale Robinson was catching a few of those passes. Getting those ball outside quick is going to be huge.
Colorado State had a ton of success throwing the ball downfield. Their ability to throw the ball was what was really successful. And downfield, there was a handful of opportunities there where Colin Hill, CSU's quarterback, just missed a few open guys downfield. And if Martinez is feeling it, if Martinez is on his game like he should be heading into this week, he's not going to miss J.D. Spielman downfield, and we're going to have some big plays. It's almost a guarantee that we're going to have a few massive touchdowns this week as long as Martinez is on his game and things going how we expect them to go, which is not a guarantee at this point with how our offense played last week. But that is going to be incredibly important.
Adrian Martinez blamed himself for, and somewhat it was fair to be on him, but he said he's going to play better. I believe that it was a fluke. The team maybe was overlooking. I know it's the first game of the season. How do you overlook a team already? Somewhat, they were overlooking South Alabama and they were sleeping on them a little bit too much.
I mean, at the least, they underestimated them,
Yes, and I don't think they're underestimated Colorado. The whole team is hungry for this game in the same way that Colorado is too, but it's different. And the Huskers, I know all of the fans are going to travel so well at this game. It is going to be mostly red like it was in all the years past. And so it's going to be a home game.
We'll see. I mean, ticket prices are insane for it. I mean, to put that in perspective, tickets are $220 for this game. For the Ohio State game, which is a high chance of being college game day and being a massive game, the biggest game for Nebraska on the season, tickets are only $120. So, they're an extra $100 for this game, which makes no sense. It's only because of Colorado's whole, agenda to not sell to Nebraska fans. That's the only reason why they're so expensive. But
it doesn't matter.
I think Nebraska fans are going to show out for sure.
It's an estimated 45,000 Nebraska fans.
That would be insane. I really hope so.
That's what the local news was saying, and
that's awesome. I really hope that's the case.
Yeah, so it's going to be really hype. I can't wait. I think it was a fluke with Adrian Martinez. I think he'll find a way to be comfortable even if he's under pressure. I believe in him more than I've ever believed in another quarterback, even though that performance was terrible and really shocking, especially from him.
Anyone that was calling for Martinez to get benched, like, what are you guys on? That's crazy. That's crazy talk. All right, because Martinez, that was by no means his fault that game. I mean, sure, he had some bad throws and he made some not ideal decisions, but the offensive line was the core of the problem. And though Colorado's defense hasn't necessarily been the most impressive, specifically, obviously, against Colorado State, they do have some big guys up front, and that could cause some problems for Cam Jurgens again. It just depends how he ends up coming out and playing. He was pretty positive with his talk this week. I mean, he said, everything's correctable. He's been working on it, and he's going to be ready heading into this week and to play a good game against Colorado, which I really, really hope so. I mean, my goodness. Troy Walters talking about how he felt like the offense wasn't necessarily on the same page at all during the whole game against South Alabama, which I think all of us could basically see. Defensively for Nebraska, stopping this Colorado offense, we already talked a little bit about it. Laviska Shenault, I think there is a game plan. There is a formula to stop him, keep him contained. But, I mean, Colorado State did a pretty good job of keeping Laviska Shenault contained, and yet they still lost the game. So, as long as we can force some turnovers and not get blown out in this turnover battle like Colorado State was, we should be in pretty great shape. Colorado had a pretty impressive performance from Alex Fontenot, their redshirt sophomore running back, and he really had a great game. I was really impressed with what he did against Colorado State. He basically didn't see the field at all last year, limited snaps so far in his career, and he was impressive. I think he's going to be a guy that Colorado can really utilize throughout this year, and it makes their offense a lot more dangerous because last year, I mean, Colorado only had 44 rushing yards against us, and we somehow lost the game again. Turnovers. It's going to take more than us just shutting down one player or even just one side of Colorado's ball to guarantee us to win this game. Going into this game, we are 3.5-point favorites. And that's not great. I mean, last week you would have thought that we would have been like 8-10-point favorites going into this game before last week. We're down to 3.5. I mean, the game opened up at 6.5, and now it's down to 3.5. So the public is betting on Colorado. It's a 64.5 over/under, and it's not going to be any cakewalk at this point after we saw last week.
I know that there's going to be a lot of hype and heart, from our players, and it's weird to think that they talk about playing all games the same, but it's totally not the way it is. There is going to be a big difference in how our team looks this game. I really believe that Martinez is going to be way more decisive in that pocket. He's going to be confident in himself, and I know the coaches are working on that with him this week, and it's going to be a lot better.
One thing that I think we wanted to talk about was the offensive game plan heading into this game. Nebraska wasn't able to game plan for our poor offensive line performance against South Alabama. That just wasn't in the books, Now that we know that there's a potential for us to be in trouble on the offensive line, you can game plan around that weakness, like getting the ball out of Martinez's hands quickly, screen passes, getting the ball to the edge,
play action passes,
play action pass, rolling the ball out. There wasn't as much of that as you'd like to see, like pistol formation, play action, a more really hard-sold play action, stuff like that. That type of stuff can minimize the weaknesses at the offensive line, and I think that's something that we're going to see a lot of from a game plan perspective from Nebraska, especially, and it'll at least be in the books, and I'm sure they're going to feel out that Nebraska offensive line performance right from the start and kind of veer one way or the other depending on how that battle is won or lost. Even if the offensive line doesn't technically quote-unquote perform better, you might not see as many of the negative effects of that bad performance because of the good game planning from Troy Walters and Scott Frost.
It's not a cakewalk anymore just because how bad our offense looked, which is, again, just crazy. But it's going to be better. And I think with the defense combo, the only real weakness I'm really worried about and the key on the defense is our linebackers coverage for pass coverage.
Yeah.
I think that's a big problem.
We did hit on that in our last video, but yeah, it's not great.
Being able to pick up the tight ends, Laviska Shenault sitting in those bubbles, that can be some real issue stuff. That's the one place where I'm really worried. And one last factor that we really need to talk about too on the offensive side is,
well, kind of.
Well, yeah, on the special team side, for scoring points. One last thing is our kicker Barrett Pickering got hurt before the first game, and isn't playing, and now we have a walk-on freshman most likely going to be kicking for us. The injury is undisclosed. We have no clue how long it's for. Barrett Pickering suited up, so I don't know if he hurt something when he was warming up before the game.
That could be.
Or what happened, but
that's really worrying. I mean, he missed his one field goal opportunity in the South Alabama game. He hit all of his extra points. I guess that's a positive.
Hey, 5 for 5. That's nice.
We'll take what we can get. But I don't think Scott Frost in general is going to be willing to let him kick anything outside of like 35 yards. I doubt it. I'd be really surprised. And that's a massive problem. Colorado's going to be able to game plan around that, and that's going to be an issue potentially. We're going to probably be going for it a lot around their 30-yard line. We're going to be going for it a lot on their side of the field, and that's going to be a big time difference in this game. Those fourth down are going to be decisive. How we convert in those opportunities is going to make a massive difference in the game.
Yeah, we're going to have to be able to score touchdowns this game. It's big. We're going to have to be able to find the end zone.
And so, I mean, that is 100% something to consider going into the predictions, which is what we're going to move into now. Again, Nebraska's 3.5-point favorites. It's a 64.5-point over-under. A lot of the cash is on the over, and it's a 50-50 right now cash spread between Nebraska and Colorado. So that is something to consider. We both really like the Vegas odds. I think it's always fun to go off of. But how are you feeling? What are your thoughts, Caleb?
I think it's actually the under this week.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's really interesting.
It's kind of going to be a rough 'em up game. I don't know how pretty it's going to be because I think our defense is going to do a lot of things that Colorado isn't going to be able to move the ball as well. And I think our offense is definitely still going to be figuring itself out. So I don't know how many points we're going to be able to score. 21-28, we win by a touchdown.
That is way under the under.
Yeah, maybe it's 35-28, but I don't think so. Maybe we can get an extra touchdown in there.
35-28 would still be under, So I mean, that's I think kind of where I'm seeing it, somewhere in there.
Colorado State on average last year gave up 450 yards to whatever team they're playing. So they're not a great defense, and Colorado is going to play a lot better defense in us this year. And Scott Frost, being in the Pac-12, he's comfortable with those teams, and he knows that a lot better. So
is Troy Walters. He coached for Colorado.
Yeah. So 28-21, Nebraska gets the win, and it's a fun nail biter.
All right. Well, I am also gonna pick Nebraska to win. I've been kind of back and forth on how this game's going to go. Sometimes I feel like it's going to be the under. Sometimes I feel like it's going to be the over. But I think the X factor is going to be Nebraska's offense against the susceptible secondary of Colorado. I think Adrian Martinez is going to be able to figure out. Troy Walters and Scott Frost are going to be able to game plan around our poor or not as or more susceptible offensive line. And that's going to be why we're more successful in this game. JD Spielman is going to have a big week if we're going to win. And I think that's what's going to happen. But I'll take the over. I'm going to go 38-28 Nebraska in a close game throughout. Oh, man. It's scary as a Nebraska fan because we know how important this game is. If we win this game, it is so likely that College game day will be in Nebraska versus Ohio State. It gets me so excited. Colorado's defense is just a little bit too susceptible for my liking. I think Nebraska's secondary is actually going to be real nice this year. I truly do believe in Cam Taylor and the boys. It's going to be a fun one. I cannot be more excited for this game. I don't think either of us could be more excited for this game. We wanted to go to the game, but the tickets were just too expensive to actually pull the trigger, but we're going to be watching the game. We're going to be ready for it, and we're excited. So we appreciate you guys sticking around for the video. We really, really do appreciate all of it. Drop all your comments down below. We know how the internet is with opinions, so fire all your opinions down below. We love to see the opinions. Fire all the hate. Tell us why we're idiots.
How bad are we gonna beat the Buffs? Oh, one more thing. Can we talk about Colorado's turnover rope and boxing? How lame is that?
Lame.
Let's jump on the turnover chain bandwagon.
Yeah.
You don't put on a rope to punch a boxing bag.
You don't put on the rope when you get in the ring. You take off the rope.
You take it off. It was the dumbest thing. That's Colorado for you. We're cool. We can be cool. We're good. You're lame, Colorado.
Lame.
I see you, and I will laugh at you.
We're giving them some bulletin board material right here. My goodness.
Good. You're lame. Take the L.
Exactly. Well, with that said, Colorado's lame, but overall, we're so pumped. We can't wait. Drop all your comments down below, Husker Nation. We know how you have your opinions about everything, so drop it down below. And we're excited for the game. We can't wait. And we appreciate you guys checking out the video and taking the time to watch all this. If you guys made it to the end of this video, you guys are the real homies. We really, really appreciate you. And thank you so much. So with that said, as always, guys, I'm Josh. That's Caleb. This has been Backseat Sports. And we will see you next time.
Go Big Red.